make a video for this, especially after Vasili and I just released an episode in the morning or last night. This morning we wake up. I'm a little bit in denial about the situation, though I kind of feel it's happening. Vasili being in the locker room the other day kind of had the vibes. We especially talked about it beforehand. I definitely didn't think it was going to happen in season. I thought, at most it was going to happen in the off season, but it looks like John Tortorella has been relieved of his duties, something I think a lot of people online were calling for, but I tend to ignore that audience. But it looks like Danny Briere proved me wrong. He was not patient with this. He probably has a good tune of what's going on with the locker room, probably talking to players on a regular basis. And it was obvious to some degree that Tortorella was losing the locker room. I mean, again, not scoring, several big losses in a row, the benchings, obviously the public statement by Tortorella, where I still believe he somewhat misspoke, but I don't think that statement was the only reason he was let go or anything like that. That might have probably led to a conversation between Danny Briere and John Tortorella. But let's be honest. I mean, it was pretty crazy to wake up this morning and to see that John Tortorella was relieved of his duties. I mean, first I saw a tweet go out by Elliot Friedman on my phone. I ignored it. Then I kind of checked the second tweet, and it's already official by the Flyers. And, you know, as of right now, Bradshaw takes over. As far as we know, Rocky Thompson is still along for the ride, even though most of us have been calling for Rocky Thompson to be removed. But this does kind of show that there are changes coming beyond, what we saw. We talked about roster changes. We acknowledged that on the podcast, 2, 3 months ago, that they couldn't go back in the next season with the same roster. Apparently, they can't go back in the next season with the same coaching staff either. It's interesting that Rocky Thompson keeps his job because he was, kind of the weakest point of the coaching staff, at least from a measurable impact with the power play being so poor. Now, maybe that stems from Tortorella. We don't know exactly. We're not the coaches, right? We're not in the position of the organization where we have full tie-ins to what's being discussed, what's being allowed. But it is obvious that John Tortorella was losing favor, right? Not just with the fans, but with the players themselves. Like that same gumption that they would come out with for every single game, the competitiveness of the organization has kind of died out. And, a lot can be said about what could stem into the offseason. Now, I thought there was a chance that he wouldn't be coming back as coach. I thought most likely they would, and they would allow him to finish out. Vasili disagreed to an extent, said he can't be a lame duck coach. A lot of people have made that segment. The way I kind of saw it, I was like, he's like a all-time coach. It's very easy in that situation to just be like, hey, it's his last season where, he's playing it out and that's it. But, kudos to the Flyers for not waiting. It shows the aggressive nature of Danny Briere. I've said it many times that he is sneakily aggressive. I would definitely put this in that category as a guy who, doesn't kind of wait till shit hits the fan, right? He was kind of jumping on this early, probably expected more losing. I don't think this is necessarily going to turn around this losing to an extent. It might create a little bit of jolt, which is probably not good with only 9 games left and just trying to get a highest pick possible. But I guess the Flyers didn't want this situation to kind of fester and get worse as they went into the offseason because they have changes coming in the offseason regardless of the draft, not just through the draft. They have changes coming through free agency or trades, the draft only being one big segment of it. So they probably figured maybe we need to jump on this early, create a different atmosphere here to attract free agents as well. Because, we know about the questionnaire that went out, and John Tortorella was the coach that definitely stuck out the most. He had the most amount of views of players who did not want to play for John Tortorella. Again, he's a tough guy to play for. And on one hand, I really like it. On the other hand, the nuance of it was kind of dying out, right? Like I brought this up on the podcast, and I would recommend going to listen to Vasili and I's full conversation. We talk about more than just John Tortorella on that. But it was kind of like with benching York, who's clearly battling some kind of injury, and then it's just like turning the knife on these guys. And then the public statement and, kind of just bought his due. So now Brad Shaw is going to be taking over. I assume that Rocky Thompson is going to continue to be an assistant coach on the bench. And Bradshaw is an excellent defensive coach. He has never really had the opportunity of being a head coach in the NHL. This is his first real opportunity. He's had some games where he's played the role of a head coach. Now, everybody knows that he's very smart, especially in the hockey world. He seems to be a very measured guy. He clearly has gotten a lot out of the defensive players, and I don't think he's somebody the Flyers really wanted to lose, hence the interim tag. Now, he might not end up being the coach for next season anyway. They might be bringing somebody else in, and that would be the end of the Brad Shaw era here as well as Rocky Thompson. Quite frankly, if they bring in a new coach, there's a good chance that there's going to be somebody new anyway, as far as the coaching staff, because new coaches usually bring on their own staff. So, I kind of figure maybe they kind of figure that they have nothing to lose by putting Brad Shaw as coach. And clearly, a guy who has the respect of the players. He is nowhere near as tough, though he does have a strong relationship with Tortorella. You know, there is room to believe here that maybe he's better at handling young players or players who at least are struggling. We saw what he did with Rasmus Ristolainen. We saw what he did with other young guys. Zamula's game has rounded out well. York had a very good season last year. Drysdale is improving. So maybe that's what they're jumping on. This does seem to be a little bit of a move of like, hey, we just need to get John out. This is not becoming tenable. Um, his, they might have had a very frank conversation too. Like Tortorella might be talking, kind of what he gave us a glimpse of publicly, that he just doesn't want to keep doing this at the end of his career, right? Like just keep missing the playoff. He obviously doesn't do very well with losing. Um, yeah, it's weird. It's weird that he's gone. Especially to do it on a game day. Again, they have the assistant coach stepping in, so it's not necessarily like the team is in utter chaos. They do have a coach who's been around here for 3 years so far, who does know the team well, who has sat behind the bench. And, credit to John Tortorella, he's allowed his assistant coaches to do that at times. It's weird. I feel like they do lose out on something by losing Tortorella, but at the same time, if it's not working, it's not working, right? Like, and the thing that and I brought this up on the podcast too. The thing that concerns me the most is when you don't have the buy-in of your captain. And never at one point do we see Sean Couturier kind of speaking for John Tortorella, right? It always kind of felt like the team versus Tortorella, and that works to a degree, but it doesn't work if there's no middleman between the two. And I think Scott Lawton kind of played that role, the guy who everybody likes. But at the same time, like he wasn't the captain of this team, nor was he the most talented player on this team. So I think with the regression of all the players and the toughness in which he was coming at them, I think again it was turning the knife on them. They were just completely demoralized as a team, right? And he's like a no excuses guy, right? So they lose their friends, they lose their attitude, and he doesn't care. He's not rallying them from the standpoint of empathy, most likely. He's rallying them from the standpoint of grit your teeth and get yourself through it. And there is a point to be made because playoff hockey is that. But this is not a playoff team. This is a rebuilding team. This is the third youngest team in the league. So there just has to be a little bit more nuance in all of this. But to me, it does seem like it's a move to be more competitive in the free agent market, right? Like they know they're going into next season. They're having players bench publicly. They have York, who needs a contract, who now was just benched and he's upset. So, right, they don't want to deal with this stuff of players wanting to leave town. And, or, you have guys like Farabee and Frost who couldn't find their fitting here. Those were young guys, right? They need to get the most out of the young guys. So, Again, pretty crazy news. I assume John Tortorella will have some kind of public statement in the semi near future. I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. I believe it'll probably be pretty amicable. I can't see John freaking out about this. Now, it does make me think like maybe he's not retiring at the end of this. Like he wants one more crack at being an NHL coach and not going out in the way that he did 3 years in a row, no playoffs, and then to get cut off in his final year. He's been fired before. Being fired sucks. So I'm sure he's going to need a little bit of time, but we'll see how the team responds. Um, I think some of us don't want to even see them respond well, in the sense that nobody wants to see them move up the standings at this point. It's pointless. But having said that, you don't want to see them lose 7-2, 7-4 to the Chicago Blackhawks. Like they was kind of falling off the rails there. And you don't want that trickling into next season because majority of fans do not want to see this happen next season again. They want a more competitive team. People were a lot happier when the Flyers finished, you know, with the 12th pick in the draft than they were at the 5th pick in the draft. People don't want to be out of it all year and have a team that just kind of disrespected around the league. So I think this is the start of that. I don't know if Brad Shaw will be the coach going into next season. I think 9 games is not a very fair test, right? It doesn't really give you a large sample size as to what he's going to do. Now, maybe they do go with Shaw anyway because they know him and they like him. And it probably depends on what the options are in the offseason and who's available. Like guys like Mike Sullivan is rumored to maybe be out of town for the Penguins, though I am hesitant because I know his relationship with Crosby is very strong. So, and Crosby will obviously be there for the foreseeable future. So I'm not sure exactly what the Flyers do from here. I know that it could stem the bleeding now, but again, I don't think anybody really wanted to see them go up in the standings. So hopefully it doesn't benefit them too much on the ice, but it stops the bleeding. I know it's a weird thing to say. I hate losing, but I also recognize how important this draft is for the Flyers, how important it is for them to go and to reset, but you cannot damage the culture so much. It's just a difficult thing to balance. I would imagine that Briere might have been thinking about this already, as the team was spiraling. And then the 7-2 loss to the Maple Leafs and just kind of everything that's happened publicly. Maybe they just thought it was the right move to just, pull it now, start planning for the offseason now, make the decision now, know what your mindset is going into the offseason because they have a lot of work to do. This is not going to be like a time off for Briere. This offseason is going to be probably the most work that he's doing all year. And it shows because he's kind of showing that right now. And that means the search continues for a new coach or begins for a new coach right now. So the search will continue in the offseason, but it probably begins right now, unless Brad Shaw can change their mind, I would assume. Otherwise, I don't think they would have put the interim tag on him, though that is pretty normal. It's usually the case that a guy has an interim tag, but had to get a video out for this. Again, watch our full podcast that came out last night. We kind of hinted at this. Obviously, the title could be on his way out. We thought that there could be a chance, but I don't think we thought it was going to happen during the season. Vasili was a little more open to that. I thought it could happen in the offseason. And again, the first real sign I ever saw to Tortorella leaving was his public statement. And we saw that now. So head coach Brad Shaw and the Philadelphia Flyers take on the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Should be interesting to see how they respond. I do expect a little bit more gusto in their game now that Tortorella is gone. And again, this is just a first step for the offseason, which is already going to be a crazy offseason in my opinion. So why not get started early? Thanks for listening. Always stay